The moment the words left the historian's mouth, a quiet royal storm suddenly felt like a full-blown constitutional earthquake, because what was just whispered in palace corridors is now being said out loud on national television. And if those whispers are even half true, then the glittering titles of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle might already be living on borrowed time. The scandal exploding around Prince Andrew has cracked open a door inside the monarchy, and what's creeping through that door could change the entire royal system forever.
Meghan Markle is threatening to sue the British royal family and Prince William if her titles are removed.
It's ridiculous. Stop it, okay? This doesn't even make sense to me that she would even think that she deserves this title.
They're basically manipulating their position for their own personal gain. I think this is a very serious moment for the monarchy, actually. I think, far more than Andrew or anything else, these are the people that are likely to really damage it.
And the man who triggered this political thunderclap isn't some random internet gossip voice chasing clicks. It's royal historian Andrew Looney, a man who has spent years studying the British monarchy, its traditions, its secrets, and the quiet internal battles that the public almost never sees. When Looney spoke in an interview with News Nation, he didn't hint, he didn't speculate, he didn't dance around the issue. He said the quiet part out loud. The monarchy, he suggested, may be preparing a sweeping internal reform, one that would permanently change what royal titles actually mean.
Is there any world in which Harry and Meghan walk back into England and the royal family and take up duties, in your mind?
Disneyland, perhaps? No, I don't think there is. I think it's gone too far. I think Charles is keen to have a rapprochement with Harry before he dies, and I think Harry is keen on that too. But I think the relationship between William and Harry is just...
According to Looney, King Charles is expected to introduce a policy that could strip titles from any royal family member who no longer performs official duties for the crown. Not maybe, not someday. A structural reform, a reset of the royal system itself. But then came the line that made palace observers freeze mid-sentence, because Looney didn't say this reform was aimed at just one person. He said the palace might deal with the Andrew problem and the Harry problem at the exact same time, and that sentence landed like a grenade in Montecito.
One bill, and it would deal with Meghan and Harry, but also critically, P. Dinah, it would deal with Archie and Lily too.
Two princes, two different scandals, two completely different stories, yet suddenly they're being discussed inside the same royal equation. One brother sitting quietly on the Sandringham estate after losing nearly everything. The other brother living 6,000 miles away in California, still using his royal status while publicly distancing himself from the institution that created it. And the solution being whispered inside palace walls is chillingly simple. The titles go. Now, before anyone rolls their eyes and says this sounds like another tabloid fantasy, consider who is saying it. Andrew Looney isn't a gossip blogger. He's a historian, a published biographer who has written extensively about the royal family and its internal fractures. And perhaps more importantly, he has been eerily accurate about Prince Andrew's downfall long before it became global scandal. So when someone like Looney says reforms are being prepared inside Buckingham Palace, people inside the royal ecosystem start paying very close attention.
You think that he kind of blames Harry for Catherine's cancer?
Yeah, possibly. I mean, I think it is deeply personal as well as public. I mean, he's, the whole reputation of monarchy has been sullied both by Harry and by Andrew, and that's the inheritance that, he's going to have to deal with.
And here's where things start to look less like speculation and more like a carefully orchestrated shift in royal policy. Because palace insiders, the kind who brief journalists quietly off the record, have been repeating the same phrase across multiple news outlets. Accountability. Titles, they say, were never supposed to be decorative trophies. They were historically tied to service. Real, visible public work carried out on behalf of the crown and the country. And when that service disappears, the logic behind the title starts to crumble.
The HRH is only given to working royals and senior members of the royal family because it denotes a level of I guess, respect in the public, and also it's not a financial thing. Working royals do not profit. They do not use their names to make money. It's an honor to have an HRH.
In other words, a royal title without royal duty begins to look unnecessary. And then came another statement from a palace aide that sounded less like gossip and more like a legal principle couple being quietly introduced to the public conversation.
Just Harry Mountbatten Windsor.
Well, I think the question is, would people want him as Harry Mountbatten Windsor?
Royal rank, the aide said, cannot simply exist in a vacuum. Read that again carefully. Royal rank cannot exist in a vacuum, because hidden inside that sentence is the blueprint for what might be coming next. And the target of that blueprint is painfully obvious to anyone watching the royal drama unfold.
Terrible news for Harry and Meghan here is that William can now take away everything, their titles, without an act of Parliament.
One of those people is Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, the man once known as Prince Andrew. After the avalanche of scandal surrounding him, the royal system has already begun quietly dismantling his status piece by piece. His public roles gone, his honorary titles removed, his royal privileges erased. The transformation was brutal and swift, like watching a royal identity being slowly dismantled in real time. And the timeline of what followed reads less like a family dispute and more like a historic institutional purge. October 2025. King Charles removes Andrew's remaining honors, titles erased, positions stripped, royal orders revoked, legal documents issued, his name removed from official listings. The prince who once stood at the center of royal ceremonies is suddenly reduced to Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, a private citizen, a commoner living quietly on the Sandringham estate after being forced out of Royal Lodge. Even his ex-wife Sarah Ferguson had to find somewhere else to live. For the monarchy, it was a seismic moment, the first time in over a century that a prince lost his title in such dramatic fashion. The last comparable moment happened in 1917 when Prince Charles Edward lost his Duke of Albany title after siding with Germany during World War I. In royal history, that kind of punishment almost never happens. And then something even more shocking occurred that February 19, 2026. Andrew's 66th birthday. Police cars quietly arrive at the Sandringham estate. The former prince is arrested. For a moment, the entire country struggled to process what it was seeing. The son of Queen Elizabeth II, a man born into royal privilege, being escorted into a police vehicle on the same estate where the royal family once celebrated Christmas together. He's taken to Elsham Police Station and held for 11 hours under investigation. The symbolism alone was staggering, because in the long, turbulent history of the British monarchy, there has been almost no modern precedent for something like this. A senior royal arrested. The last time anything remotely similar happened was in 1647, when King Charles I himself was detained during the English Civil War. History doesn't repeat itself often in royal life, but when it does, it sends a message. And the message this time is impossible to ignore, because if the monarchy was willing to dismantle the status of a prince born into the system, then what exactly is stopping them from doing the same thing to a prince who chose to walk away from it? Because once Prince Andrew was arrested, the palace did something subtle but incredibly revealing. The official statement released afterward did not refer to him as Prince Andrew, not once. Instead, the statement used the name Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, the name of a private citizen. That wording wasn't accidental. In the world of royal protocol, language is never random. Every word is carefully selected, every phrase carries meaning, and insiders immediately understood what Buckingham Palace was signaling. The monarchy was drawing a line between the institution and the individuals who embarrass it. A quiet but unmistakable separation. Think about the symbolism for a moment. A man who spent his entire life as a prince suddenly being referred to as an ordinary citizen in an official palace statement. That's not just a legal technicality. That's a message, a warning. And according to Andrew Looney, that warning wasn't only meant for Andrew, because the historian didn't just talk about royal reforms in abstract terms. He connected the dots directly, openly, and uncomfortably clearly. In fact, he described Andrew's downfall as something else entirely, a demonstration, a test case, a practical exercise in showing the world exactly how royal titles can be removed. He even used a phrase that immediately made headlines, a warning shot across Harry's bow. That phrase matters, because warning shots are never fired randomly. They are meant to be seen, meant to be heard, meant to make someone think twice about what they do next. And inside the palace, the machinery for removing titles has now been tested in real time. The legal process exists. The precedent exists. The political reaction has already been measured, which means if the monarchy ever decides to act again, the road is already paved. And that realization changes everything for Harry and Meghan. because suddenly their position within the royal ecosystem looks very different. When they left the UK in 2020, the assumption inside many royal circles was that the titles would quietly remain attached to them as a symbolic link to the family, a compromise, a gesture of goodwill. But now the conversation has shifted dramatically. Now the question being whispered inside palace corridors is much more blunt. If titles are tied to service and Harry and Meghan no longer serve the crown, why should the titles remain? And that question started growing louder at the worst possible moment for the Sussexes, because just days after Andrew's arrest shook the monarchy, Harry and Meghan boarded a flight to Jordan, a 2-day trip that at first glance looked like a humanitarian visit. There were motorcades, carefully staged photo opportunities, visits to hospitals and refugee centers, meetings connected to the World Health Organization, cameras everywhere, public relations teams feeding identical statements to glossy magazines. But to royal insiders watching from London, the optics were explosive, because what the world saw looked exactly like a royal tour, except it wasn't. There was no official backing from Buckingham Palace, no formal diplomatic role, no approval from the monarchy, and that is where the tension began to boil over. Royal commentator Daniela Elser described it bluntly. She called it DIY royal touring, a performance of royal duties by people who had already stepped away from the institution that authorizes those duties. To the palace, the message felt obvious. The Sussexes were still using their royal status to open doors around the world without actually representing the crown. And then there was another awkward detail. During that Jordan trip, the country's own royal leadership remained noticeably absent. King Abdullah II and Queen Rania, who had warmly hosted Prince William and Princess Catherine only months earlier, did not meet with Harry and Meghan. No dinner, no official greeting, no palace appearance, nothing. And in royal diplomacy, silence like that speaks volumes, because sometimes the most powerful message is the one delivered without words. But the political tension didn't stop there. Just 4 days after Andrew's arrest, something happened in the British Parliament that many observers initially overlooked. Darren Jones, the chief secretary to the Prime Minister, stood up in the House of Commons and delivered a statement that sounded routine on the surface. Yet buried inside that statement was a sentence that made constitutional experts sit up straight. The government, he said, was not ruling out action regarding the line of succession. That phrase might sound technical, but its implications are massive, because Prince Harry is still 5th in line to the throne, and his children, Archie and Lilibet, sit 6th and 7th. If Parliament ever decided to formally redefine who qualifies to remain in the line of succession, for example, by limiting it to active working royals, the consequences would ripple directly through the Sussex family. Titles could disappear, positions in the royal framework could vanish, and the monarchy itself could quietly redraw the rules. That meanwhile, another piece of information surfaced that made the entire situation even more dramatic. According to royal journalist Russell Myers, King Charles had once considered offering Harry a remarkable role within the Commonwealth Governor General of Canada. The plan never materialized because the position is traditionally held by a Canadian citizen. But the fact that the idea was even discussed reveals something profound. Charles was willing to go to extraordinary lengths to keep Harry inside the royal system. That door is now firmly closed, and Harry knows it. Reports circulating through People magazine say he is deeply frustrated by comparisons between himself and Prince Andrew. According to sources close to the Sussex camp, he hates being grouped together with his disgraced uncle. And morally, of course, the situations are entirely different. But structurally, the palace may see them as identical. Both are non-working royals. Both still hold titles granted by the crown. Both benefit from the prestige of royal status without performing official royal duties. And if a new rule emerges stating that royal titles must be tied to active service, then the reform wouldn't target individuals. It would target the structure itself, which means the same rule would apply to both men. And that's where Meghan Markle enters the equation in a much bigger way than many people realize, because the title Duchess of Sussex isn't just ceremonial for her. It's the foundation of the entire Sussex brand. Every charity event, every public appearance, every partnership, every magazine cover, every humanitarian visit, every speaking engagement, every documentary deal, all of it is built on that single royal identifier. Duchess. Take that away, and the entire dynamic changes overnight. Invitations look different. Media attention shifts. Negotiating power fades. The global aura of royal prestige suddenly disappears. Without the title, Meghan Markle becomes a former actress living in California with her husband. With the title, she is global royalty welcomed onto international stages. That difference is enormous. And Andrew Looney believes the monarchy is already preparing to erase it. According to him, Prince William, when he eventually becomes king, is expected to remove the Sussex title titles as one of his earliest decisions. But the twist is this: King Charles might not wait that long. The Andrew precedent now exists, but the legal mechanism has been tested, the public reaction has been measured. And each time Harry and Meghan appear overseas presenting themselves as quasi-royal figures, the political pressure to act grows stronger. Constitutional experts say discussions are already underway about formally defining the term working royal. Once that definition becomes official policy, the titles held by the Duke and Duchess of Sussex could become legally indefensible. Andrew Looney called it a warning shot, but warning shots only matter if the target recognizes them. And judging by the Sussex strategy so far, the global tours, the public appearances, the relentless branding around their royal titles, Harry and Meghan don't seem to be stepping back. Anything, they're leaning in. That which means when the palace eventually makes its move, the announcement won't sound like speculation anymore, that it will sound like a verdict. And when that moment arrives, the real question won't be whether Meghan Markle can live without the title Duchess of Sussex. The real question will be whether the entire empire she built since 2020 can survive once those 6 letters disappear.